What if I told you that the most powerful nations on Earth don't actually fight their biggest battles alone? Look at this map of the world right now, and what you're really seeing isn't just countries. It's a complex web of military alliances that determine who wins wars before a single shot is fired. These hidden forces shape everything from trade to technology to which nations thrive and which ones struggle. Today, we're breaking down exactly why countries form these alliances and how they're reshaping global power in ways most people never even notice. Let's start with something fundamental. Why would a country ever give up some of its independence by joining a military alliance? Think about it this way. Going it alone sounds powerful, right? But here's the reality. No single nation, not even the United States, can be everywhere at once. They can't defend every interest, respond to every threat, and maintain military presence across every ocean simultaneously. That's where alliances come in. They're not a sign of weakness, they're actually a sign of strategic brilliance. When countries band together, they multiply their power without having to spend proportionally more money. Consider NATO for a second. Formed in 1949, after World War II, it started with just 12 member states. Today it has 32. Why? Because countries realized that standing together against a common threat was exponentially more effective than standing alone. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, NATO didn't fracture. It got stronger. Finland and Sweden, two historically neutral nations, applied for membership almost immediately. They understood something crucial. In a world where threats are unpredictable and often come from powerful adversaries, having allies isn't optional. It's essential for survival. But alliances aren't just about defense. They're about economics, influence, and shaping the future. When countries form military alliances, they're also creating frameworks for trade agreements, technology sharing, and intelligence cooperation. The Five Eyes Alliance, that's the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, shares intelligence so comprehensively that they're practically one unified surveillance and information network. That gives each member advantages in everything from cybersecurity to understanding global threats before they materialize. Here's what really matters though. The countries that form these alliances don't do it randomly. They do it strategically. They look at geography, shared values, economic interests, and mutual threats. They calculate whether the benefits of cooperation outweigh the costs of coordination and compromise, and they're constantly reassessing whether those alliances still serve their interests. Now, let's zoom out across the entire global landscape and look at the map of military alliances as a whole. What you're seeing is basically two competing visions of world order. On one side, you've got Western-aligned alliances like NATO, the Quad, and various bilateral defense treaties. On the other side, you've got China and Russia building their own alliance networks, pulling countries into their orbit through military cooperation, arms sales, and strategic partnerships. Take the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, for example. It started in 1996 as an economic and diplomatic forum, but it's evolved into something much more militarily significant. It includes Russia, China, India, Pakistan, and several Central Asian nations. They conduct joint military exercises. They coordinate on regional security. They're essentially creating an alternative to Western-dominated alliances, and it's working. More countries are joining because they see benefits in aligning with rising powers like China and maintaining good relations with Russia. But here's where it gets interesting. These alliances aren't monolithic. They're constantly shifting and adapting. India is a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, yet it's also part of the Quad, which is explicitly designed to balance Chinese influence in the Indo-Pacific. That means India is simultaneously aligned with both sides. It's playing a strategic game, maintaining relationships that serve its interests without fully committing to either bloc. The same thing is happening in the Middle East. Traditional American allies like Saudi Arabia and the UAE are now deepening military and economic ties with China. They are diversifying their alliances because they understand that the world is multipolar now. No single power dominates everything. Countries that want to thrive need relationships with multiple powers. This brings us to something crucial that most people miss. Military alliances drive technological advancement. When countries are allied, they share military technology, coordinate weapons development, and combine their research capabilities. The F-35 fighter jet, for instance, is built by the United States, but involves technology and manufacturing from dozens of allied nations. That level of cooperation wouldn't happen if these countries weren't bound by alliance commitments and shared strategic interests. Now, before we go further, I want to make sure you're not missing the bigger picture here. If you're interested in understanding how global power actually works, how nations think strategically, and what determines success and failure on the world stage, you need to subscribe. We break down these dynamics constantly, and each video gives you insights that most people never get. Hit that subscribe button and let's dive deeper into how the world really works. Let's talk about the specific mechanisms that bind alliances together. Trust is foundational, but it's not enough. Alliances require institutional structures. NATO has a permanent headquarters in Brussels, with thousands of staff members coordinating everything from joint training exercises to weapons standardization. The US has bilateral defense treaties with dozens of nations, each spelling out specific commitments and obligations. These aren't casual arrangements. They are deeply embedded in law, military doctrine, and political commitment. Consider the US-Japan alliance. It's been the cornerstone of American strategy in East Asia for over 70 years. The two countries maintain joint military bases, conduct constant training exercises, and have integrated their military planning to an extraordinary degree. That level of integration makes it nearly impossible for either country to abandon the alliance without massive disruption. The costs of separation would be enormous for both sides. That's actually one of the reasons alliances persist, even when they're expensive or unpopular. The switching costs are enormous. Countries have invested decades building integrated military structures, training interoperable forces, and developing shared doctrine. Walking away from that means starting over. It means vulnerability during the transition period. It means losing decades of accumulated advantage. But alliances also persist because they solve a fundamental problem in international relations, the security dilemma. When countries are uncertain about each other's intentions, they tend to arm themselves defensively. But when one country arms itself, other countries see that as a threat and arm themselves in response. This creates an arms race that makes everyone less secure. Alliances break this cycle by creating transparency and commitment. Members share intelligence, coordinate military planning, and make binding commitments not to use force against each other. That reduces uncertainty and allows countries to spend less on defense and more on other priorities. There's also a reputational dimension to alliances. When a country makes a commitment to an ally and then honors that commitment, it builds a reputation for reliability. That reputation matters enormously. It makes other countries more willing to form alliances with you, because they know you'll follow through. Conversely, when a country abandons an ally or breaks a commitment, it damages its reputation globally. Other potential allies become less willing to trust it. This is why the US commitment to NATO matters so much. For 70 years, America has honored its commitment to defend NATO members militarily if attacked. That reputation for reliability has been crucial in attracting allies and maintaining influence. If the US were to abandon NATO, the ripple effects would be enormous. Countries around the world would lose confidence in American security guarantees. They'd either arm themselves massively or seek protection from other powers. That would fundamentally reshape global power dynamics. Alliances also create what scholars call burden-sharing arrangements. Wealthy countries with advanced militaries provide security for less wealthy or less militarily capable countries. In exchange, those countries grant basing rights, participate in joint operations, and align their foreign policy with the alliance leader. This arrangement benefits both sides. The security-providing nation extends its influence globally. The security-receiving nations get protection they couldn't afford to provide for themselves. But these arrangements can become contentious. The US has long complained that European NATO members don't spend enough on defense. The US provides the nuclear umbrella and maintains massive forward-deployed forces, while some European allies spend less than 2% of GDP on defense. From the American perspective, that's unfair burden sharing. From a European perspective, the US benefits from having military bases and forward presence in Europe, so it's fair that America shoulders more of the burden. These tensions are real and they matter. They can weaken alliances if they're not managed carefully, but they rarely break alliances because the alternatives are worse. If Europe had to defend itself without American support, military spending would skyrocket. If America had to defend its interests without Allied support, it would need vastly larger military forces. Both sides are better off cooperating, even when there's disagreement about burden sharing. The future of global power will likely involve multiple competing alliance systems, rather than a single dominant bloc. That's actually more unstable than the Cold War bipolar system, where countries knew clearly which side they were on. In a multipolar alliance system, countries have more flexibility, but also more uncertainty. They can shop for better deals, but they also risk being left out of important decisions. This is where the motivational aspect really comes in. Countries that understand alliance dynamics and build strong relationships position themselves for success. They gain influence, security, and economic benefits. They shape global outcomes in their favor. Countries that fail to build alliances or that isolate themselves fall behind. They become vulnerable and irrelevant. The same principle applies at every level of human organization. Individuals who build strong networks and alliances succeed. Businesses that form strategic partnerships grow faster than those that try to go it alone. Communities that cooperate thrive. The principle is universal. Cooperation through alliances multiplies power and creates opportunities that isolation never could. So as you think about global power and geopolitics, remember this. The nations that will shape the 21st century won't be those with the most military hardware or the largest populations. They'll be the ones that build the strongest alliances, that maintain the most trusted relationships, and that coordinate most effectively with partners. They'll be the ones that understand that true power comes not from dominating alone, but from leading a coalition. That's the hidden force driving global power. It's not military might. It's not economic size. It's the ability to build, maintain, and leverage alliances. Master that, and you understand how the world really works. If this perspective on global power resonated with you, you absolutely need to subscribe to this channel. We break down these geopolitical dynamics constantly, showing you how nations actually think and strategize. Every video gives you insights that help you understand why global events happen the way they do. Subscribe right now, and then watch our next video on how economic interdependence shapes military